And that brings us to our discussion agenda, item number 15, which are the parameters for the general fund budget. And Mr. Richardson, we will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Gant. Members of the board, saved the best for last, did we? I just want to give you, I guess, a brief overview of what you can expect when we present a budget to you. Next meeting, I believe, will be a discussion reading. So we're gathering a lot of information. We're putting a lot of numbers together, and we'll have all that information to you, like I said, at the next board meeting. I'll just give you a brief recap of what we did last year. Our projected revenue was $181,714,000, and our expected expenditures were a little more than that at $181,891,358 for a difference of $176,603. That was what we budgeted. That included the allowable millage increase for this budget. Our budget increased by a little more than $7.3 million. We did add some additional staff during this process, as well as offer step increases. And we obviously did away with some fees in the schools, so we gave some additional money to the schools for their allocations to keep them operating, since we did away with the majority of our fees. And as one thing we did do that I'll touch on a little bit in a little while, with the sunset of the Terry program at the end of June, we did budget a little extra money in there for all the terminal leave payout that we expect to have at the end of this fiscal year. Here's some dates for you, just kind of give you an idea of where we are, where we're going. Hopefully the legislature will stay on task and get it done like they're anticipating, but typically they do run a little bit longer than what you see on the calendar every year. Obviously, the House, based on what we're looking at here, the House has actually taken up the budget. The full House is today. Everything that I talk about after this will be based on the House Ways and Means Committee budget that was passed along to the full House. As you can see, on March 20th, the full Senate Finance Committee will begin their budget deliberations. And then the first week of April, they began the full Senate budget debate. We're hopeful that they will have this budget done by the first part of May, so that the legislature can return for vetoes the week of May the 8th. Here's our budget calendar right now. Obviously, I'm going over the parameters for you, what we expect to see for next year. Like I said, the March 26th meeting, we'll have your discussion reading. In April, we'll have our first reading, and hopefully we can be finished with this by the end of May on our May 21st meeting. Like I mentioned earlier, everything I'm talking about is based on what the House Ways and Means Committee passed on February 22nd of this year. The information that you see in yellow is just information from the current budget year, and then what you see below that is what is happening for next year, or what currently is happening for next year. Point out a couple of items to you. You'll notice that statewide in FY 17-18, the appropriated statewide weighted pupil units was 993,981, and right below that you see that we're actually at over 1 million statewide. However, I do understand from talking with some folks at the Department of Education that there was a pretty prominent school district, I will not tell you who it is, that reported several of their schools twice. That is what's put us over the appropriated statewide weighted pupil units, and has caused a $10 per pupil cap to the base student cost this year. That has cost us approximately $500,000 the way it stands right now for the current year. The 2019 estimated fully funded base student cost would be $3,018. The Department of Education requested 2550 base student cost, and right now, the House Ways and Means Committee has appropriated $2,425 for the base student cost, which is exactly what was appropriated for the current fiscal year. And then going forward, I'm a little skeptical of this number as it stands right now, but the statewide weighted pupil units for next year is 997,545, which is a little short of where we are right now, so I'm a little worried to see where we actually end up this year once all the corrections are made to the schools that were reported twice. So, what did Ways and Means do? Well, they did not give us an increase to the base student cost. However, they did add $32 million to the line item to keep it at its current level. There's $8 million in for leasing school buses. There's a mandated 2% statewide teacher salary increase, partially funded through EIA and partially funded through the general fund. There's an actual $24.2 million line item, separate from the base student cost, that is going towards teacher salaries to help fund those salaries. However, it is going to be distributed based on the Education Finance Act formula. I'm not sure why they just didn't include it in the EFA and be done with it, because they're going to give it to us the same way. My fear is, because it's a separate line item, it'll be a one-time shot, and it'll be gone the next year if they don't include it in the base student cost. There's a $22 million increase in what they call aid to districts, and that's actually categorical funding, where they've rolled up some technology, reading, and professional development lines to distribute to school districts. We've got some technical assistance money that we won't see a whole lot of, but that's an $11 million increase for the state. Also added some money for the required 1% retirement fund increase we knew was coming. That is on the employer increase. We have a $5 million added to the state minimum teacher salary schedule to bring those cells in the teacher salary schedule up to a minimum of $32,000. There are a handful of districts in the state who pay on the state minimum, so this will help bring their salaries up to $32,000 for a beginning teacher. There's also $13 million increase going to the public charter school district to cover their student growth. And then there's also a $2 million increase for career and technology education. There's a couple of things that are going on that are kind of concerning to me, because we as a district, District 5 right now, as part of the EFA formula, I know you've heard me talk about the index of tax-paying ability. That's basically the assessed value of this school district in a ratio to the entire state. Our index has gone up, which means in the eyes of the EFA, we are now richer, which means we'll be bringing less money in. At the current base student costs and everything else remaining the same, that means about a $500,000 loss in funding to this school district. And also, our weighted pupil units are not increasing as quickly as the state is currently, and that's also costing us a little bit. So those two things are a little bit concerning to me that are happening right now. So here's the bottom line. We've got a 1% increase in our employer contributions for the retirement system coming our way. There's a 7.4% increase in health insurance coming our way. We've had a 2% mandated cost of living for teachers. Obviously, this district has typically paid all employees that 2% as well, so that's something we've got to consider. Step increases for all eligible employees. Obviously, additional staff to meet all of our requirements and board policy, and to make sure that we're maintaining the well-being of our students and staff. What I spoke to you a little bit earlier, which is going to be helpful to us, is the fact that we did have a non-recurring expenditures in there for the Terry terminal leave payout. That's going to help us in the long run. And then, of course, you know, the unknown of the middle school expansion. I don't know if that's going to require additional staff or what, but I thought I'd put that one out there for you. There's also a couple of bullet points that I do not have on here that I just found out about last week, late last week, and this had already gone to you, but I need to make you aware of this too. There is a move right now to change how our poverty index is calculated. It was based on free and reduced lunch counts, and this has been going on. I think we're probably using 2014 data as it currently stands. They're looking to change that. The Department of Education has run a couple of, I guess, estimates on what it would cost us if this change is going to be made. If the state does move forward with this, as it currently stands, we stand to lose a little over $200,000 just because of that one move as well. With that and the index of tax-paying ability change, which is the other bullet point I wanted to mention to you, everything remaining equal, we could be losing money somewhere to the tune of $600,000 to $800,000 next year. And I'll just give you a ballpark. This is not based on any type of in-depth calculations or anything, but you take into account what it is for what it's going to cost this district for the 2% cost of living, 1% on the retirement, the 7.5%, almost 7.5% on our health and dental. We're looking at an increased cost just for those items alone, somewhere in the neighborhood of $6.5 million roughly. So I tell you all this just to get you depressed until we come back in here at the next meeting.
I thought he said the best for last. And that's what he said.
Is it working?
Mr. Gant, especially with all the list of things we need to do.
I thought you said the best for last. Doesn't sound best.
Sorry. It was a joke. This is just to give you an idea what our calculation for our millage increase could be if it's required once we run all the numbers. And obviously there's a couple of things that we don't know, and we will not know probably until later in March. I think March 22nd is the date where some of the population growth information is supposed to be released. But as it stands right now, the CPI is 2.13%. So with that alone, it would give us the ability to raise millage somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5.5 mils. So I think at a minimum that will be what we are looking at, because I think we will see some population growth numbers there, which will increase what we will be able to do locally. That, Mr. Gant and members of the board, is the end of my presentation. But I'd be glad to try to answer any questions that I may have made you think of.
Didn't you leave out the good news part of this somewhere? We're still waiting that you got another piece, hadn't you?
Good news. We haven't run all the numbers yet, and so we'll see how they shake out. But I am a little concerned based on some of those things I mentioned to you.
It's good. It's good to know up front what we might be facing. Any questions from board members? Ms. Hammond?
I think I know the answer. I wanted to be sure. The mandated 2% raise for teachers, that is different than the cost of living?
That is the cost of living.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So it's not that, but I'm saying that's all in one. Yeah. When we say step, that's about the cost of living.
No, cost of living is when the entire salary schedule is inflated. The eligible teachers get a step increase.
Yeah, it wouldn't go for teachers that have stepped out. You know what
That's
I'm
correct.
saying? We have a cap. Is it still 23 years?
23 years, I believe, is what the state's now.
And then where you had the slide that had, was it 7.4% that is the increase?
Health and dental increase?
Yeah, that's paid by the district?
It
That's our
is.
cost, or not? Does it go on to the teacher or the employee?
No, that's the employer cost. Everything I mentioned to you
I
is
got you. That's what I
employer
thought.
cost.
Okay, so that's really, has
That-
it been that much every year? That seems so high.
No, it has not been that much recently. I don't recall. I think we were somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 3.5% last
Yeah,
year.
that seemed high to me. I thought maybe that was.
That was high. As a matter of fact, we thought it was the difference between 3.3 and 7.4, but come to find out it is 7.4% increase is what they're suggesting. And what what the House Ways, now that can change. I mean, anything that I've talked about can change, obviously, as it goes through the process. But what they had originally talked about, they did not want to be able to pass any of the costs along to the employees. So that's why the employer cost is going up so much.
And one other question, like, Mr. Gann, isn't it April that's the day at the Capitol that some of the
I think
districts?
the next
I
one.
think we go then to lobby for changes or for what we see as needs for the district. The final vote would be, it'll be after April. What was your date? Well,
We're talking May before we have our final
May
vote.
before, no, okay.
The end of May.
See, we have a chance, people. In April. But thank you. I just wanted to see. And then that step, though, when you say mandated, am I remembering right? Was there one year that the General Assembly gave the school boards the option to give it or not give it? Did we ever have that? Yes. Did we?
I think we did.
If I'm right. And so,
There was an option given back during
yes,
the Great Recession
2008 maybe, or something like that.
that districts were given the option of not providing a step increase.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
I think there were actually 2 years that they actually allowed
Okay.
that.
Thank you. That's mine.
Mr. Richardson, we're on schedule for March 26th. I know how this usually works. It gets a little more refined, a little more information, but that'll be our first discussion reading of the budget at that time.
Yes, sir. And we'll have some pretty firm expenditure numbers. Revenue numbers they keep evolving, and hopefully as we get through the process, those numbers will become a little bit clearer to us as well.
Right.
And hopefully the Senate will have more money to deal with this year, I hope.
I hope so.
Oh, Mr. Kent, I got one.
Yes, ma'am.
Has there been any more legislature about some of the poorer school districts? The lawsuit and adequately funded, but sometimes they have to take the money from the whole pot. And is that some of what hurts us here? Have they changed that, funding plan or whatever?
No, this is, the information I provided really has nothing to do with an equity lawsuit. Those districts, I did get some money this past year or the current year for some capital expenditures, but there's really been nothing for them.
It doesn't really take from other districts.
Not directly.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anybody has anything? I know Mr. Richardson would be glad for you to funnel it toward him, and like I said, we'll get more defined information. But we thank you for that presentation.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, that brings us to our last item, which is to adjourn. Do I have a motion that we adjourn? Ms. Bumgardner.
I move that we adjourn.
And we have a second. Ms. Hammond seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And we, again, appreciate everybody being here tonight. Dr. Lofton, we appreciate your hospitality. And